Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duvel, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who can honestly say he doesn't know what's going on inside of him.
Tim Longo.
Terra Longo.
Terra's right. That's a Terra reference for her.
Yep.
Yeah, what the heck is she talking? I guess she's talking about like motherhood. I don't know.
Oh, wow. That's a deep read. I mean, maybe. I thought it was, she's got all these changes going on with her body right now. Who knows?
I don't know. I just felt like it was triggered by the kids, and like the responsibility of that and something.
Yeah. Yeah. She does have kind of a lot going on because also her people and the magic that is inherent to her have also been responsible for this huge amount of destruction. Right. So I feel like it's also that is like destruction, but also rebirth, right? With all these kids, as you point out, but of course they're only her kids because of the destruction. Like I can imagine that being very tumultuous on a person.
Maybe it's, I don't know. I guess we'll see if she ever kind of explains or figures out what she's feeling, but if it's left up to interpretation, then I definitely would give them credit for that. Cause I don't think they need to like hit us over the head with whatever it is. Cause like you just said, if you just have your own theories about why she's feeling that way, it's maybe better. Cause that character has and is going through a lot through the story. It's pretty messed up. But we're talking about Final Fantasy VI, by the way.
We are indeed.
The never ending. How many episodes did we do for Zelda? Was it 9, 8?
I think it was 9, including
with Lanny.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's
so.
Right.
Can we beat the record?
We might well at the rate we're going. I could see it happening. I had a solid hour where I accomplished basically nothing at the end of my last session.
Oh boy! Wow.
So it ended up being a lot of grinding. I mean, it's never a bad time to grind in this game.
Yeah,
we'll talk about why with some of my experiences as well this time. But let's rewind a little bit back, to before the destruction, and talk about the floating continent, which I had finished last time, but we didn't discuss because you had not. So why don't you take me through that? That was a lot tougher for you overall, and I have some. I'd like to hear some things about why. So if you could go ahead and let me hear it.
Yeah, it's. We talked about some of it last because I had played it 3 or so tries last episode. So I think we talked about some of the downsides to that kind of design in particular, right? Where it's which they've done a few different versions of, but this was sort of the worst one, where there's navigation and sort of pattern recognition on which way to go, et cetera, and combined with the random encounters, which kind of reset your memory about things. So, full disclosure, I ended up using a walkthrough to basically try to get past the first section because I kept coming out of combat. I kept getting confused about which path I should go use. Yeah, and I've already been very vocal about my dislike for the random encounters in general. So, with the battles themselves, it was. Basically, I think I'm at a fine level, and I was using. I don't think I'm over leveled for sure, but I don't think I'm under leveled either. But there were a couple. It's random, so it's kind of like there's a couple monster combinations. Well, one in particular, there's these flying dragon things that do this wing attack that just for some reason was always just whittling me down. Very quickly. And then there's the dragon that can sneeze all of your characters away, right, with one shot. And so, although I think if you get all of them sneezed away, then you don't lose. I think you just
lose out the XP, I believe.
You just go back. Yeah. So that one's not as bad. But I just had enough annihilations where where often I think what I did wrong, which was kind of unavoidable based on my schedule, is if I had too many annihilations, I would stop and then I'd play another day. And the problem with that is I would forget everything that I had done before and kind of like start over. So I think ultimately I got close to 5 hours just on the continent.
That is a lot.
Yeah, and that in the last hour or so was with a walkthrough as well. And then so once I got to, once you get to the save point, which is like, I don't know, I even have it in my notes. I don't know if I've ever felt so happy to see a save point in my entire life. I mean, it's like, holy cow, thank goodness.
I also don't think I've been so despondent to see a save point in my whole life because, of course, I wound up back at the beginning, a couple of times when I was trying to, I was like following, I had my hand on the wall and would end up back at the beginning. I'd be like, dang it, what did I do wrong? What did I miss? And of course, what I missed was I went into combat right after I lowered that wide bit of land that you need to go across, but I had already gone and explored that and then unlocked it and then had a combat and then forgot that I had to go back to there, like we talked about last time. So I had the same thing, except I was the other side of it, like crying when I'd get back to the beginning and then losing like an hour of, because I did it again, another hour loop of trying to find my way through that thing last week. Brutal.
Yeah. And then what ended up happening on the second half was once I got to, and you had warned me, but it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit of a Final Fantasy thing. You get through so then you fight the Ultima weapon, which is a hilarious name for a monster. But okay.
Well, it was split into the ultimate weapon, the Atma weapon that you can actually have in your inventory. Like I have it equipped.
Yeah. And where did you get that? I feel like, because they talk about it later too.
Yeah.
And he actually wasn't that bad. I think I took him down on the first try. It was close. Like he had whittled down quite a bit. And I think mainly I'm just not managing my cures enough. I need to be Johnny on the spot with that stuff. But I did take him down quickly. Then that elaborate cutscene plays, which a few different things to mention there. One, like Gestal's death, basically, and like getting kicked over the side, and like just like a super dark, like they're definitely doing a good job building up Kefka at this point. And so that's a pretty long sequence. And so after that sequence, you have the time sequence, which again, time sequences and random encounters I think are never a good idea, but not very difficult. But when you get to that boss at the end of that sequence, I guess it didn't sink in that he had reflect on or something. And so I wiped there.
Oh.
And so that puts me back before the Ultima weapon, whatever it is. So I had to play the whole sequence again, and that cutscene is not skippable. So I had to watch the whole thing again, and then I went through, and then only used physical attacks on that boss, and it was like a no-brainer. But, it's just like, that was like at least another 45 minutes, just that ending sequence.
So I want to ask you a question about that end sequence. Did so you get there, and you probably have, a minute, 30 seconds left or something like that. Did you wait?
I did, because I had the walkthrough, and I had.
So you knew.
Yeah, I had read ahead. I was reading sort of like the walkthrough, and then at the last thing it says is that I was like, wait, what is this about? Oh no! And then I had spoiled it for myself. So, but I totally would have left. I would have. I
did.
If
I was like, I jumped. I was like, oh, get me out of this place. It was also, what I was finishing there for the week, right? So I was like, oh yeah, get me out of here. And so, I had 30 seconds or a minute or whatever left on the clock, and I was like, get out of here. And people were in the chat like, do we tell him? Should we tell him?
Oh, right. Oh, no.
And I'm like, no, don't tell me. So, So
how does it transpire though? Like, how do you know what happened?
Well, he had said, so for me, of course, and this is the grim part of it, you may remember, that's Timmy.
Oh yeah, right, right. So Timmy saves the day then, because Timmy's the one that comes in and like
Yes.
holds off Kefka and
Right.
saves Celis, and
Yeah, he basically sort of imprisons him in the, in between two statues, and is like holding it there so you can get away, right? Which I think is all pretty neat. Just like he's just that strong and he can do it, and you can definitely see the precursor in later better rendered cutscenes and things like that. The sorts of things they're going to do, very anime, last moment, like I'll hold it, type things. That you would see.
The fact they're doing all this with, like we talked about last episode, with these little pixel characters, still. I mean, it's still compelling to me. I'm having a good time. It's entertaining.
If not more compelling.
It's a great moment. Yeah, having Shadow come in, and that kind of, that Deus Ex Machina moment and stuff.
I mean, in a way, in that respect, 7 is a step back for me.
Interesting.
Because, I mean, you've probably have seen the cover and how...
I've seen enough of 7. I played a little. I've played probably a couple hours of 7 in the beginning, but back in the day.
just like the cutscenes are by, later Final Fantasy standards, even by Final Fantasy 8 standards, they are very... they don't hold up, in my opinion. I mean, I think at the time probably people wouldn't have cared. Like, so it's more looking back that you just are like, I don't know. It's like seeing the grid bugs in Tron or something. You're like, ooh, that worked better when I was 10 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know about that, and I then died. Then he died, and I only realized later when I went to a shop. Because all the characters that you could equip show up on that menu whenever you're in a weapon or armor shop. Like it'll show like this would be better or worse for people. And he wasn't there. I was like, oh. But for me, I don't really mind that. Like, to me, like you said before, he's the hero. Like that, it works for me. It's like, he sacrificed. He knew he had done things that were wrong, and he tried to make up for them. And I kind of like that. Like, I don't love that I'm not going to get more of the story, but for my one story, it's a good story, So I don't. It doesn't bother me.
I would have been okay. I mean, I guess it's cool that they have an out for if you wanted to do it, but I would have been okay with them killing him just through the story proper. You know what I mean? Like it would have felt fine. I don't know. Truthfully, I'm not, for my version of Shadow, I'm not really that attached to him anyway. So even though I did save him, I don't think I'm going to use him. But it is because of that sequence, I did investigate his throw ability much more than I ever had, because he, was forced on me in that sequence, and I needed to use him because it was, so difficult. But I mean, his throw is actually pretty powerful if you're willing to waste weapons, because he can literally throw anything, I think.
Oh yeah.
He can throw like a sword, like a thunder sword or whatever, and it does a thunder attack. Of course, cool. you lose the sword, but it's like, right. I think literally he can throw anything in your inventory, which is pretty funny.
That's wild. You could probably throw a potion at an undead and do damage that way as well.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
I bet they do all that stuff.
It's clever, yeah. But it was a good sequence, and it is neat that they had that option.
The next character you could save is Sid.
Yeah. Right.
Did you save Sid?
Or
does he die? So you can save him with the fishing mini game.
I brought him a second fish. I must have waited too long, maybe.
There's a timer, it's not shown, but under the hood there's a timer, and then there's a point limit. There's some range that you have to get, and this fish gives him this many points, and this fish gives him this many points, and you can basically run back and forth with fish and nurse him back to health. But again, dang. For me, I'm like, that's kind of a cool ending for Sid. I'm not sure I did talk with people on the stream about this, that they were like, I'm not sure the minigame's worth the pain of trying to do it.
Because it's not worth it if he.
Well, I mean, I don't. I mean, it's the question is whether it's a better story that he just sort of
yeah, right.
dies in there, and Celis learns. We learn that Celis probably knew. We learn that he's her grandfather, and so we get stuff that we might not have gotten otherwise, or maybe we do. I don't know, of course, because I didn't see the other branch. But I also thought that was neat. I could go back and try to do it because I have a save, a classic save on that, a memory save. But
but that's a lot of.
I wouldn't replay from there. No, I would just go and see how it would differ.
Oh, does he? Yeah. So he doesn't come back into play in the story if he survives?
I don't know. I don't know how much he would.
Interesting.
I was just curious what happened there. Yeah,
didn't even dawn on me that he could be savable. It felt appropriate to me that he died there, and pretty pretty somber moment too. And the whole just waking up on a deserted island and the whole and then finding out that it's a year later, and I mean lots of good stuff. And I think I probably mentioned this in the past, but past episodes, but because you kept alluding to some big event happening, and I will admit I was skeptical the whole time that whatever this event was going to be big enough to actually for me to care about. I just didn't believe that it would be, and this definitely was big enough for sure. The only thing that I know why they did it. I think it's probably maybe their best option, but I guess I've come to be irritated by it. But resetting your party yet again and having to go find them all yet again is just
yeah, I know. I'm not crazy about that either myself. I mean, it forces exploration of the world, which I would, I don't think that's the only way to do that. So I don't know that that's justification enough, to be honest. There are some high points to that. I think, like we already talked about Terra, for a couple minutes at the top, just because we were kind of into it.
They do good stuff with it. I'm not saying they waste it for sure. They don't waste it. It's just
it's just the mechanical burden of, okay, I'm just one person now, and the difficulty possibly of that. Like you could conceivably, go quite a ways and be just Celis for a long time and be in real trouble, I think. So that, I think that's a possibility there. That's a risk that they take. Although I think they highlight, they sort of show where Sabin is they really telegraph Sabin in particular, so that you can, and Terra for that matter, like either end of the Serpent Trench. And it's funny too, because when you look at the map now, you can actually see that it looks like a serpent with a mouth as well, which was neat. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. The other thing that really hit me about it was a total throwaway line in, I think, even that first town maybe that you go to after Sid's death, where you learn about
Mobliz?
No, not Mobliz, because that's where Terra is.
Right.
Yeah, this is where you learn that's that you need to go to Mobliz and whatever.
Isn't it Albrook? Isn't it just
might be Albrook?
But anyway,
anyway, whatever it is, I talked to somebody there, and they said, I think it was there. It might have been where Sabin was, but I think it was there. And the person said something like, I remember how it used to be. And I just had this moment of playing this in 2021 and being such a, we grew up, Tim and I, at a time when, there was a threat of nuclear war. And I've said this, I've talked about this before on my blog and with people in general, for a long time when I was young, I just didn't think we were going to make it as a species because of a potential nuclear holocaust. I thought that was going to be the end of the world. And was led to believe that as well, to some degree, right? As a young, impressionable child who, probably listened to the, television news more than was intended. And just was generally scared. Anyway,
Yeah.
But, you know, of course, so that has translated into my adulthood and being, you know, direly terrified about climate change. And that moment where that person said that, you know, just resonated. It's a total, you know, one line, you know, of, you know, like, I remember how the world used to be or something along those lines. And I just was like, oh, youch, you know? Yeah. Me too.
Well, to the degree where, I mean, there's definitely a few people in that initial town that say it, but you know, in some of the other towns, there's a couple moments when they even do like this flashback, you know, sequence where, did you get some of those where, where they do like a sepia tone, like, and they show just even for a short minute, like there's this one older woman that says that, and then they flash back and it looks like maybe her as a child in the same town. It's the one I think you find Setzer in, but anyway, yeah, I mean, they definitely sell the whole. I mean, it's just funny how relevant the story still is today, and I mean, I think it. You know, humans are so ridiculous that it probably will always be relevant. I mean, you said climate change, but it also could be COVID, or you know, it could be. There's also always something, it seems like, to worry about.
And again, you know, it could be, you know, World War II Japan, right? End of World War II Japan, as well, like as we've already alluded to in earlier episodes. So yeah, there's a lot of possible echoes, and it also, like, at that point when you say that, I also think this is just being human, right? Is that there's always something, and that's something about us as a species, both in aggregate, like the things that we do to the planet with war, etc., but also internally in terms of how we view the world. And this is pretty deep stuff for a JRPG from 1993 or whatever. So,
well, and Terra, right, to your point about internal, that's kind of seems like what Terra's going through.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah, it's surprising. I'm happily surprised at how far they're going with this stuff. And despite the sort of the moving the goalpost of having to get your party back together, which I'm sure we can just kind of go through each of them now, but they are not phoning it in when it comes to having unique sequences that are pretty gratifying for each of the characters. So I'm kind of looking forward, even though I don't really have too much other than maybe Cyan. I don't really care too much about the rest of the characters actually Locke, I need to find. Somebody's mentioned something about Locke going after a treasure, which is obviously what he would do. So I'm interested to see. Oh, it was actually, it was the father of his comatose girlfriend, or whatever.
Rosalind, or
that said it.
So that's so long ago now that I've forgotten her name, but
which I'm hoping, when I get him, I'm hoping that I'll get that scene that you got, from there, because she's still down there in the basement. But anyway, so I mean, each of the sequences are they're quite good and unique, and so I'm kind of looking forward to see how they introduce the rest of the characters, or which there's 4 or 5 more, so it's like a lot more to come.
And I mean, I've gone and and you haven't found Mog originally, the Moogle. And I went looking up there. I don't know why I went there. That's Narshe.
That's supposedly taken over by monsters or something, right?
And it sure is. There's random encounters everywhere in the town, in the buildings. If you can get into the buildings, some of the buildings are locked, so I'm going to have to come back once I have lock, I presume, to unlock the buildings. And of course in the mines. And Mog is in the mines, and I know because I was trying to. I know this is how I can get the Sasquatch. In fact, when you get Mog or Yeti, he was introduced as a Yeti before, but Mog called him a Sasquatch, so I assume it's the same character. Now is my chance to get the Sasquatch into the party, and I spent a good hour just wandering around those mines trying to find where that dude was, and I don't know. So there's a dragon on the top of that
Oh, shoot.
up north of that town, and I got up to that and got my butt kicked several times before I was like, okay, I'm going to rewind and run away, because I have the mini classic, and I was very happy because it meant I could try the dragons and see, how far do I have to go? Like, it was not a big deal. Like how far skills wise or like abilities, or just test things and be like, how long can I last? And, is this a matter of lasting 5 or 6 rounds, or is it, more than that? And what strategies can I tried a number of things with the 3 dragons I did find. But I did not find that stupid Yeti, and there was so much combat in there. It was like, there's a lot of random combat everywhere, but it started to feel really oppressive, like, because the same thing, like, I would come out and be like, okay, where was I going next to try to look for this dude? It was very, very frustrating. So,
yeah, that doesn't sound
never bad to grind.
It's never. Yeah, it's true. I mean, in a way, you're never, unless you get annihilated, you're never technically wasting time if you're grinding, leveling up. Yeah, I wonder how the Moogle thing's going to work for me, because I haven't found him. And Yeti is actually somebody you can get in your party?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Because he's not in the manual. It must be as a surprise they want. The manual that I have, at least. They didn't want to reveal that, so that's good. So anyway, I mean, just there's a certain amount of linearity, I guess, in the beginning of that sequence, right? Once you get to the serpent's trench. So Terra, I mean, I guess you wouldn't technically have to do Terra, do you?
No.
I did, because they kind of were alluding to it. So you go and she's a couple of the NPCs in Albrook or one of those towns said something about how one of the towns had been devastated and all of the adults had died trying to save the children. And so you get there, and then, like we talked about, Terra's taken them all under her wing and is protecting them. And so it's, it's definitely like one of those, the archetype of a town full of children living, right? Like a Peter Pan situation or something.
Sure. Yeah.
But then, I mean, it's interesting. Like we said, she doesn't want to leave. You do fight a demon that is one of the other NPCs talks about roaming around. He seems to run away. I don't think we didn't kill him, so I assume we fight him again at some point. And so she chooses to stay. So then you just leave. At least that's what I did.
Yeah. I just left. I didn't know what else to do about her. I didn't know if I'd have to go and get other party members, or find something else. Like maybe there's an Esper somewhere who could convince her, something along those lines. I don't know. We are definitely into territory that I did not like. I knew coming into this game that there was a point at which the world was destroyed, where there's a moment of like, you've lost effectively. And the game keeps going. But that's all I really knew. And beyond that, I didn't know anything. And I mean, even last week you asked me, if there's going to be a build up to some final battle. And I assume so. I assume we're going to eventually go after Kefka.
Well, it seems like it's his tower, really, right? I mean, probably the tower is where the game, well, I don't know. Maybe that's where it ends, but I mean, in 9, I think there was a tower too, but then you get to the top of the tower and then you're like in heaven, or I don't know. It like didn't seem to ever end. So it's like, now I know not to expect there to actually just be as simple as a tower. Who knows what will happen, but and you can't access the tower because it's surrounded by mountains. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah. So
yes, I did. Yeah.
So you need at least an airship or something, which we have.
It makes me wonder if it's possible to just skip the dragons.
I mean, the way that the NPCs talk about the dragons, it seems like an optional thing. Yeah, it seems like a legend that reveals. Again, I don't remember what they said exactly, but they said something about if you kill all 8 of them, you get something like a power or something, or a weapon or something. So it like you probably don't need that thing to finish, but you might want it. It's a really elaborate side quest, I guess.
That's pretty elaborate. I mean, that's I mean, it's sort of Zelda-esque, really, in terms of how much you're going to have to go, because you have to find them. Besides, nobody tells you where they are. I found 3 of them, and was each time surprised. I was probably least surprised at the one that was north of Narshe, that there was one there. The other 2 were surprising to me, like where they were. So
did you just happen upon them then, or did
I did? Yeah, I did a lot of exploring. So I've been some places. I went back to, this is a clue for one. I went back to Zozo, and there's basically one beyond that. I don't remember why I went there. I think I was wondering. I had talked to those guys who had said, like, when you're following Edgar, or Garrett, or whatever he calls himself at the time.
Yeah.
When you're following him, there's a couple clues about treasure chests, and like that it's to the right of the treasure or something like that. I think were the quotes, something along those lines. I can't see it in my notes right now, but it's something like that. Like
which
there was
treasure?
I don't know, but I assumed because I was talking to the thieves. Yeah, to the right of the treasure chest. And then later I found one who said the treasure is hidden where the mountains form a star. But at that point I was like, I don't know what those mountains are. Anyway, but speaking to one thief who said it's, to the right of the treasure chest, and these are like I said, Edgar's thieves, I was like, well, maybe I need to go back to Zozo. So I was just kind of trying to follow that thread, because there's all those thieves in Zozo. And I was like, well, maybe there's a treasure chest there where there's something special, near it. But I could not find that. So I ended up going back there and actually made my way past it to Mount Zozo, which you can do at this point in the game, and found another dragon up in there. So, yeah, so they're going to be all over the place and weird, I bet. It's wild.
Are there save points around the dragons? Or, I mean, do you remember? Or are they right outside? Because I'm a little worried that, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried for you as well, I have to say. I mean, when I fought one, I was like, oh, man. I hope Tim doesn't run into this. No,
I losing progress.
Well, there is a save point specifically with that one in Mount Zozo, right where you basically have to free it. So right before you free it, there was a save point. That one, yes. But the one in Narshe, I don't think there's a save point. I think the place you can save is like on the field outside town. Like, I think it's that bad. Like that there is no save point. And then the other one, I don't think there was a save point. I think it was the same, that you could have saved outside town. So
that's crazy. Sometimes the save points are not easy to find too. So they're hidden in there or something. But.
Yeah, that's also possible. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, but that's
that's rough.
Yeah. Interesting. But then we go back up to the top of the Serpent, which that town is.
I don't know that I wrote that down, so I can't tell you.
Oh yeah, I'm blanking on the name, but yeah. So you run up, and then there's like a crash, and then they need your help. And then you go up there, and Sabin is literally holding up the house from crashing on this child.
Yeah.
Which is so Sabin. And he's one of the ones I have in my party all the time. So then you have to
that's
go in.
That's Tizen.
Tizen, yeah, right. So you go in and have to save the child, and again, timed with so what I ended up starting to do with any of the time missions is when I get into combat, I just run away. I just avoid whatever escape or whatever it's called, and then dust the time, and I figure I'll grind later to make up any of that. But
in there you really have to. It's super tight. In fact, I didn't do that on the way in. I got a bunch of treasures, and I got to the kid, and then
Yeah, I failed the first time too.
Getting it back out was pretty tight. So I used smoke bombs at that point to escape at each combat. So
I also have warp now, so I can use warp to get out of there too. Which I guess is sort of the same as this. I've never used a smoke bomb, but I found the running away to be so far. I mean, I guess I haven't tried it. Obviously, you can't if you're surrounded or whatever. You can't. But if you're not surrounded, it seems like it works for me most of the time, or all of the time. I haven't had a failure yet. But you still take hits, so maybe that's the reason why. As you're trying to run away, that's the reason why you want to do it. But smoke bomb. But anyway, yeah. So that was a fun sequence. You get, Sabin comes back and he's goofy. He's his usual goofy self, just laughing, and he's just jolly still. And it is neat to have Celes sort of like, because there's that one sequence on the island where she goes up to the top of the mountain and basically jumps off of the mountain, and like super depressing, like dark kind of moment that is, they sort of make light of a little bit. So not great on the death by suicide sort of camp, but they sort of sinks in a little bit for me, at least, that she does feel alone and is worried that they're not alive, and so as she's finding each of them, it's definitely cool. And so, yeah, you join up with Sabin, and then I think you get on a ship, right? And you go to the next, then you move over to the town with the ship.
Right. And, so, and you have to find Edgar.
Yeah. And he's just standing there.
Yeah.
That's funny. He's just in town standing there. And they talk about this, like you said, there's the thieves that he has sort of like tricked. You find out he is tricked. And they talk about him as the leader of the thieves.
Right. Right. Because he rounded them all up to go back to the castle, which had bumped into a wall or something underground. I think was the thing. And that's how they got, they got free. Yeah, they kind of are. That's true. Somebody actually says that was sandworm. They talk about it. True. Somebody does, or one of the thieves. Yeah, but then you go there and Gerard is just standing in the middle of the. It looks like he might have a scar on his face in the pixel art too. So, and he's wearing some different clothing than he usually does. It's like a darker clothing, so he's a little bit disguised maybe. And he's totally like Celes is. I love how she's trying to, get him to blow his cover, and he's not buying it. And you can't tell. I don't know who you're talking about. Yeah. I couldn't tell if it was like amnesia or new identity kind of thing, or if he was just playing the part. So you find out that he was just trying to get, into the castle basically, and to fix to get the thieves. I was a little bit thin. I didn't quite understand why he needed to do this elaborate thing to get to the. I guess they knew, because the thieves knew the secret passageway in the caves to get to the. Right. That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was. Castle. Yeah. He needed to gain their trust basically, so they would take him in, and then he basically, they basically thought he died, going into that treasure room or whatever, and so they fled. They got what they could get and they got out. And then you get to move the castle again. So. Yeah, again, that castle is pretty cool. That whole sequence is, and just getting into the innards of it, and then being able to use it to cross the ocean once again. It's pretty cool. Yeah, but he does. And luckily, that's where I got to see the Sabin Edgar scene at last. What do you think of that? I thought it was pretty great. I mean, of course, I knew what was coming. I do think that the coin is pretty bare. If we had not talked about it, I would have had no idea what the significance of that coin was. Like, I would not have remembered that Setzer had, that she had flipped the coin, and Setzer was like, hey, it's got, 2 heads or whatever. I would not have remembered that. Part of that's how we're playing it and all that, and our busy lives. But yeah, I mean, that would not have landed for me at all. It was a long time ago for you. Yeah. Well, the other thing that happened for me, though, is because both of them were in the party, even when Setzer said that, I had different lines, right? Because once right, they reinforced it. Yeah, they reinforced it because Sabin says to Edgar, "Wait a second." At the time he says it. Wait a second. Yeah. You mean
that was the coin that you used 10 years ago, kind of thing. So, whoops. So yeah, anyway, keep going though.
Yeah. No, it was a really effective scene. I mean, the hardest part was just figuring out what I was supposed to do to trigger it. But it's like, yeah, I had to go find the place to rest, and basically while I was resting, I got to see it, which I don't know if that's how it worked for you. Probably, I would assume so, but it was also just weird. I was like, oh, maybe I get to see it now, because he, they talk. They have a little, like, when they get there, instead of him saying, oh, I wish Sabin could see this, they have a little interaction there, at the opening, which I'm sure you saw. But then, like, triggering it, I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do to trigger, the more complicated thing that I know that you had seen. So,
yeah, I don't remember how it was triggered. Yeah.
I think it was just that you sleep.
Oh, that's what it, yeah, right.
You go find the room where, there's a couple maids or maidens or whatever that are, in this room, and you can just sleep and rest, and it triggers it. So,
yeah.
But it's cool. Yeah, it's a good scene.
I'm impressed that they allow you to do it still, you know what I mean? Like, so much has changed, and it still triggers. So I guess, that's nice. So I'm hopeful that I can see the lock thing too. I wonder what others I wonder if there's others we've missed that we don't, like. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something more with Cyan someplace, like going back to Domo Castle. There's got to be something with him. That must be where he is, in fact.
Yeah, that makes sense.
To go get him. But yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to see, where everybody is. So yeah.
Well, and then we go get Setzer after that. And I'll let you take that because, of course, his ship's the Falcon, so I got to let you have it.
Right. Yeah. So the next closest town, once the castle surfaces, you head over to that next town, which I forget the name of that one too. But I actually had gone, because obviously I'm looking on the map, on the mini map for the white dots, and I actually had gone to the gravesite first.
You know what? I might also have Cyrano. Actually, now that I think about it. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So you found him.
Cyan.
Okay, I was going to say.
I renamed him Cyrano, but yeah, Cyan.
Oh, so you already found him. So was he not at Domo? Where was it? Or...
He was not.
Okay. Well, you don't have to tell me, I guess.
I'll tell you. It's fine. Save you the time. If you go to Miranda, there's a clue there about there's these pigeons, and somebody talks about how.
Oh, that's what I'm about to do.
Yeah. Okay. So you're there. You'll get him next.
Okay. Yeah, because Salis, once you get the Falcon, she says, "Follow that bird," and you end up at Miranda.
Yes. Exactly.
So that's where I ended. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually went to the gravesite first because it's on the map, and I was like, "What's up with this gravesite?" And then I went to the town. Yeah, and then you find Setzer, and it's kind of a fun sequence because Setzer's kind of given up, and he thinks he's a failure and doesn't think he's cut out for it. And then Celis gives him a pep talk basically, and I fairly easily convinces him that he can do it, and that he should be an adventurer again, I guess. And he's in the pub, drinking, being a gambler. He's in the cantina, if you will. And then,
oh dear.
Yeah. And then he gets an idea.
So now I've got to get that Sasquatch so that he can have his hairy buddy.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's got to be what it is. That's got to be.
It must be. Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah. So then he has an idea, and he talks about this old friend of his whose name, Daryl.
Daryl. Yeah. Daryl.
Yeah. Daryl. That's such a, okay. And so he goes to that gravesite, which is sort of a tomb. And then this, the cave, once the cave opens, sort of a secret passageway, and you go down into this crypt, this tomb. And it's quite a neat sequence. I actually really enjoyed it. There's sort of some water puzzles where you have to flip some switches and jump on turtles' backs, which you had to do once before. So
follow Edgar. Yeah. Follow Edgar.
Yeah, following Edgar. So there's a little bit of good teaching there. And so you're kind of going through this tomb area. There's still random encounters, of course, and there's a couple treasures and stuff, and a couple good pieces of treasure, actually, is my memory. But and then yeah, and then you find the actual like burial, sarcophagus or whatever. I couldn't quite tell what the artwork was showing, but and then there's a boss, which chariot kind of thing. Didn't quite understand what that was all about, or I don't even remember the name of it. But
yeah, me either.
I mean, it was fine. I think I got it on the first try. Yeah, and basically you see this whole sequence where Setzer had this companion, girlfriend, I don't know, and she also had a what you call it, airship, and it was named the Falcon, and they would race, and they have these flashback sequences where he sort of like is nostalgic for this time, again kind of coming back to this theme of nostalgia and thinking back, and she was always giving him a hard time, and then she kind of goes off at one point. I don't remember why they were racing and she had gone off into the far distance, like up above the clouds or something, and then kind of didn't come back, and then he finds out later that she crashed, I guess.
Yeah.
And then
it takes him a year to find the wreckage. Yeah.
Right. She basically disappears.
They were supposed to meet. They were supposed to meet at a cafe or something like that and talk about the race or whatever, and she never appeared, and he didn't know why. Right. Sort of.
Right.
Sort of a Bogey and Bacall moment. After Paris. Or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
They were supposed to meet up and never did. Yeah.
It was good to get a little bit of background. I still am not a huge fan of that character but it was nice. They're using the opportunities to give us more background on each of them. So that's definitely a good use of time. But he finds the wreckage of the Falcon and then basically refurbishes it, restores it, and then hides it, keeps it in the tomb for safekeeping for some
way
reason.
Below, apparently. You take all these stairs down and he's like, telling you the stories. You go down, down, down. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, exactly. There's these long staircases going down, and Celis is always my lead character, so she's always the artwork of who's walking around. If I have Terra, it will be Terra, but so it's kind of a neat sequence, and then you get down there, and there's apparently the Blackjack was not the only airship in the world, and so it survived the whole ending of the world, and he says, why, we're going to use this is ready to go. And I actually love the sequence where they take off, because it comes out of the water, out of the neat ocean. Very cool. And they have some nice sprite effects happening of it kind of going through in the water, the water splashing on it, and then they can come out of the ocean. Very classic, cool, like, I don't know, like Nemo kind of shot or something. And so that's kind of where I ended. I got I got the Falcon, which is obviously we know the namesake, and then we go to Miranda after that. So that's where
so I followed from Miranda and followed those breadcrumbs, and then was trying to seek out some of the the answers to these puzzles that I mentioned, just following other breadcrumbs, and ended up in Narshe and spent a significant amount of time there. And I'm not done, because I haven't found my darn Sasquatch buddy, who I am now even more determined to find.
Yeah, right. You need your Chewbacca.
I do. I need my Chewie.
So when you found Cyan or Sereno, is he in your party now? Who's in your party right now?
Yeah, it's everybody but Setzer. So I dropped Setzer out as soon as I had the opportunity. I mean, because I just haven't used that character. It's funny. I used his special twice, which is the spin. He does the slots.
I've used it quite a bit. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I both times hit. Exactly right. So it was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about what they do to feel effective with it, but I was like, wow, I did it. Like, I was just surprised I did it, I think, more than anything else, twice. I don't know how difficult it is to pull that off, but I did it both times and was like, oh, I don't know how I did that. So it was just neat, but I don't, it wasn't neat enough for him to be in my party. Although I did buy him the best darts I could buy him. So,
oh, that's nice of you.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty flush with cash at the moment because I've been banging around Narshe for a while, and I have like, I don't know, 200,000 gil or something. So.
Oh, geez. Wow. I tend to spend mine as soon as I get it for the most part if I find
I was down to like less than 10, I think, when I entered Narshe. So you can guess how long I've been running around in there.
Oh, wow. Holy cow. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that definitely feels like that point in the game that we've been talking about, which I know is just a staple of Final Fantasy and maybe our JRPGs in general, a lot of them. But yeah, we're in that spot where you're going to get, unless you do something specific, you're probably going to gather a lot of money because it's just exploring and doing a bunch of stuff. So yeah, it seems like a lot ahead.
Well, and you can go to the auction house, which I did, and then rewound because I didn't have any money. And there's an auction house, and I sat through a bit of that, and there was like a robot for sale. And I don't know what that's about, if that's a possible party member or if it's like an accessory to somebody or something. Like, I don't know what that's about. So that's another thing
It's not the robot explore. From Chrono Trigger.
It's an imp robot. No, it is not the robot from Chrono Trigger.
How funny.
So yeah, it's hilarious. But yeah.
Jeez,
anyway,
this game just
I know, right?
It's just crazy. I mean, I guess 9 was like this too. 9 was fairly elaborate, and there's just a lot going on. But I don't know. This feels more like there's combination stuff and more so than Final Fantasy. Like, I feel like this might be the last of that because it's 16-bit and they could kind of do more, because it was abstract and it didn't mean the higher production values and et cetera of, they could just do it with the pieces that they had. So they could just throw everything in it, in the kitchen sink and just push as much of that stuff in as they could, and moving forward to where they're doing more pre-rendered cutscenes, for those big moments. That was basically where it forks, is after this game. It's like, after this game, it's, less of the in-engine stuff, although by the time you get to, I don't know, 13 or 15 or whatever, you've got more of that, because now the in-engine stuff is just as, high quality as the cutscenes in most cases, but it's still expensive to do those things at that point, right? I mean, the expense, it's just as expensive because it's so high poly to animate it and make it look right. When it's that well represented, you have real uncanny valley problems for anything that doesn't look like the animation, the faces, et cetera. And it just gets very, very expensive very, very quickly to do all these sorts of combinations. So, yeah, I mean, this is as we talk about a lot, this is an era of, if they have an idea, they can probably make it happen. Versus, and relatively inexpensively. Like, these days, if you have an idea, to make it happen at the quality you need to, especially on like a Final Fantasy 13 or 15 or something, it's like, it takes and in fact, 15 is a good example, because I don't know how much you follow 15, but 15 had a very troubled.
I'm well aware. Having played the game, I could tell.
Really? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's a point in the game where you have this sense, like you have in this one, when you're going to kind of go and meet a number of, they're not called espers in that game. I think they're called Titans, or maybe the first one's Titan, but whatever. They're the big magic things.
Yeah.
You're going from like place to place, and you're finding them, and you're having these big battles with them, and then they, I guess you acquire their magic at that point or something like that. Whatever, it's standard Final Fantasy type stuff. And then there's a point where you go to an area and it's a little bit thinner, and then there's like a 30-year time jump.
Oh wow!
And you basically jump to the end of the story.
Whoa!
And you're like, what just happened? Like, I mean, you can feel it in a big way. Like, and what I said to people at the time, I think I streamed this one. What I said to people at the time, maybe I didn't. Maybe it was just when I was playing another one, we were talking about it. I said, you know what? The thing is, by the time I got to that point, I was actually done. Like, I didn't want any more game because
Yeah.
there was so much game to get to that point. You know, and there's a lot of side quests, and they're more explicitly signposted as well. There's a lot of sort of MMO style quality of life, you know, like go here, and like there's a board, a job board type thing where you can see, and everything tells you like how difficult it is. Like there's just a lot of this stuff that we have in more modern game design. And there's a ton of it because it's a lot more replicable, and it's a lot, you know, it's like go kill a bunch of these things. Like, I mean, there's just a lot of that stuff. And so by the time I got to that point in the game where it's just a huge time jump and then like this just bonkers ending, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm fine. You know, I'm fine with it. Like, I can tell this is not the game that they set out to build, but at the same time, I've played 60 hours. Like I've really had enough. You know, and then they tried to backfill some of that with DLC and telling stories from other characters' points of view.
I've heard
in that time skip.
Yeah. Oh, okay. They're filling in the gaps.
Yeah, they fill in the gaps, and they tell you because, you know, you meet up with those characters again, and things have happened to them. Like one of them's blind, I think, and so they have stories that tell what happened there. But it was something, I'll tell you. I never played any of the DLC because, like I said, I basically had enough.
Yeah,
and I appreciate these older games. You know, they might be just as long, and this one is if I do all the dragons, like it feels like it's going to be quite a lot of work. But in general, I'm good with it. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean the presentation. I think, like I said, maybe first or second episode of the series. The presentation is, for whatever reason, changing my perception of things quite a bit. You know, just because of the abstract nature of it and the pixel artwork and the retro presentation. I'm just, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I haven't played other than 9, right? I haven't played a more modern one to see sort of how the translation of some of these sort of forced mechanics work in a modern context and whether they still kind of rub me the wrong way or not. But for whatever reason, this one, you know, is fine because of that presentation. So it's interesting. I would not have guessed that would be a reason for me, but in retrospect, I guess I kind of understand why that's the case. And so I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's really 12 again, where they start to feel like they join up again. Like that all the representations feels pretty equal.
Cohesive. 12, you're saying?
More cohesive. I mean, you still have the battle, you know, the battle arenas, you know, that never goes away, but you know, so you still transition into those, but the models look the same, right? You know, it's you know, it's all the same 3D models everywhere. So there is a little bit more consistency. And I know that trips you up with some of the ones in the PlayStation 1 and even PlayStation 2 era, even though 12 was a late PlayStation 2 title.
Yeah.
But that might be, you know, because I know you have that one. So
yeah, Mark.
And I know you've got dozens of hours.
I know. I mean, to be honest, every time I sit down and play 6, I'm thinking about, like, you know, I mean, I do want to play. It's literally just a time problem.
Bandwidth.
The other thing that, as a completely unrelated side note, because I'm playing on my PlayStation 3 and I, you know, it's a whatever PS Classic version of the game. I also have Symphony of the Night still on there, and every time I boot it up, I see that, and I'm like, oh man, that's a good game. I should play that game again. It's so good. So, you know, that'll never happen, but it's that era. I don't know, some good stuff.
10 years from now, we'll just restart the cast and just redo all the games with another 10 years under our belt. Just start over.
That would be quite an experiment to see, how things change, how we change, what our perspectives would be. That's like that's an alternative universe kind of thing. Like that's
basically
like some sort of time travel story or something.
I mean, by then I'll probably have forgotten all these games.
Oh, I definitely
the way my memory's going. My memory's starting to go too. So I'm with you. All right, let us step aside from this. We're going to just continue to find our own way through at this point because it has opened up. It's harder to be prescriptive about what to play to. So we'll just play and get in as much time as we can, and just see where we get and talk and see what falls out. So, because we definitely want to get to some of the feedback before we get too far away from it this week, and let it run away from us. Before we do that, you have a couple of emails, but before we do that, I did want to mention that we heard from Gabe Durham, who's the editor-in-chief at Boss Fight Books. You might remember that name, Tim.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He had sent us along a copy. They have forthcoming shortly a Final Fantasy VI book, mostly focusing on the music. So I might try to fit that in before the end of the season, our series. It's written by Sebastian Decken, and like I said, it primarily focuses on the music and how Uematsu reinforces the themes of the game in the music, themes and characters and things like that. So I'm deeply curious, and that's not the sort of critical analysis I often read about the game. So it's super curious, and I want to throw that out there, let people know. I think it is coming out shortly. I don't think it's actually out. We got an advance ebook copy. It looks like it is coming. Let's see. I actually got an email today. It's their 28th book in that Boss Fight Books. It is going out in July. So yeah, still time to get an order in at Boss Fight Books if that would be of interest to you. So another one they've done not too long ago was Silent Hill 2. So if you ever feel like you need to go back to that town, Tim, Silent Hill.
Good game.
That was a good game. Another one we could revisit in 10 years.
Nope.
I'll still have my PS2 so I can, or my, did I play on the PS2 or the Xbox? I'll still have my Xbox, I guess, so I can play it. I don't know if that Xbox still works, but anyway, let's go to email. These were sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. Last week I sent you 2 of the short ones, but I'll let you read one and then I'll read a longer email and then we'll alternate as usual. So go ahead, sir.
Okay, Final Fantasy Active Time Battle from Nick Fallhaber. Hello again. First time writing in since the XCOM series. You've probably heard this from others, but Final Fantasy IV was the first in the series to have the active time battle system. I'd also say the snail boss being a tutorial for the real-time combat is probably a pretty likely guess because all 3 SNES games had basically that same first boss. The Mist Dragon in Final Fantasy IV, the Wing Raptor in Final Fantasy V, and the Welk/Ymir in Final Fantasy VI all change phases throughout the fight and counterattack in their defensive form. Enjoy the game, Nick Fallhaber. Thank you for the history lesson there, Nick. I did meet, there's a monster in the box in one of the, I think it's in the, where they're trying to save the kid. Yeah. They're trying to save the little kid that's falling down. And there was a snail kind of character that was holding the chest. I actually ran away. I didn't want to fight it.
I rewound because it was taking too much time. So I just,
you didn't do it either. I was wondering,
I didn't do it either.
Wondering if it gave you something really good because he was holding a chest in its maw. So anyway, yeah. All right. Well, good to know. So it is there's a bit of a tradition there for them. So. Yep,
for sure. This is from Derek in Spokane. It's Final Fantasy VI as the subject line. Brett and Tim, I always enjoy listening to you guys talk about games, but there have only been a handful that I actually have a really strong connection with. Final Fantasy VI is one of those games, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw that come up in my podcast list. It seems like Final Fantasy VII is the one that is most often talked about, but to me, Final Fantasy VI has always been my favorite. That's definitely not one I expected you guys to play, considering you have already played Final Fantasy IX and Chrono Trigger. Side note, neither did I, Derek. Somebody else suggested this game. I was around 11 or 12 the first time I played Final Fantasy VI. Me too. And played it in a somewhat unorthodox way. For some reason, my parents didn't really buy us games, but we rented games all the time. I would go to our local store, rent this game for a couple of days, and then take it back. Then the next weekend, or maybe 2 weeks later, I'd go back and rent it again and just hope and pray that no one had wiped my save file in the meantime. Over the
Wow.
course of 4 or 5 rentals, I beat the game, and not once did I have my save file deleted by someone else. I like to think that myself and the others who rented that cartridge had an unspoken rule about not deleting anyone's save files, like some kind of kindred spirits playing through the game in parallel and all knowing what a dick move that would be. It was always interesting to see the other save files whenever I rented it, check their levels, and maybe even get a glimpse of characters I didn't have in my party yet. This was the game that got me into RPGs, and I would later go on to love other SNES RPGs like Chrono Trigger, Super Mario RPG, Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy IV, originally Final Fantasy II, and then PlayStation RPGs after that. I did go back and play through this game one more time years later through emulation, but haven't touched it in over 15 years. Today, I'm much less tolerant of games that waste my time, and I'm not sure I have the patience anymore for random encounters. I'm afraid that if I go back, the rose-tinted glasses are going to fall off, and it just won't be as good as I remember. But listening to you guys talk about it these last few episodes is really making me want to go back and give it a go. My oldest son is 9 years old, so it might be a good trip down memory lane to play it together. Though he is used to watching me play modern games, so I might just have to put up with some insufferable comments about how quote-unquote bad the graphics are, Derek. In Spokane, yeah.
Wow.
That is a thing. I loved, I think you have like 4 save slots or something. I don't know. I don't actually know how many you have.
Well, on you have 6 on
maybe,
the way that.
Maybe more.
But
Okay.
this is that classic remaster, but collection, right? That I'm playing on. So I don't know if it would have been the same. Side note: the weird thing about this version, this emulated version on the PlayStation Store / PlayStation 3, it's the transition and loading times are actually longer than I want them to be. Like, I'm like, why is this not instant? Like, there's no reason that these should not be instant. And so it's just so weird. But anyway, yeah, side note. But yeah, I bet
there is a reason, Tim, but it's complicated. I mean, it had to all fit on a CD, right? So, and CDs spin and you have to seek and all that stuff, but cartridges don't. None of that happens with a cartridge. It's just memory. It's just memory and wires. So you just blast it in. Like, so it's actually, cartridges are much faster. That's partly why.
No, I know, but why? But I'm not playing on a CD. Like, this is
but the emulator is treating it as if you are.
Exactly like it. Yeah,
yes, it is exactly what. Yeah, it's supposed to be exactly the experience of what it was before. Yeah, so it's treating it as if you're reading from a CD-ROM. It has not been updated in any way. You're literally just playing an emulated version with the same, and you have to do that because sometimes things are timed on the basis of CD read times. So you're stuck. Like, you have to treat it as if that's what it is. Yeah, it's a mess.
They'd have to remake it to fix that. Then.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it actually, to be honest, it makes the random encounters a little bit more excruciating because it's just a little bit, just enough of a delay to, and actually even going into your menu, it takes longer than it should.
Oh, I've heard that. Yeah, that the menu is slow. That's funny.
So it's definitely a pain. I definitely at this point very much wish I was playing on this SNES Classic. I don't have a SNES Classic, but I would have. Yeah, I mean, isn't Symphony of the Night also on the SNES Classic? Is that?
No. Castlevania 4 is, but not.
Oh, okay.
Symphony of the Night was only a PS1 title.
Okay, right. That's right. Anyway, yeah. So, but renting games, I mean, that I was the same. I was the same in the same. I mean, I'm a little older, of course, but the concept of renting games and your save files and stuff is definitely.
Or even just, in my case, borrowing. I borrowed Zelda Link's Awakening from somebody, and who was very clear that I was not to touch their save file because he was so proud. This person, whoever it might have been, he was so proud that he had beaten them. What an achievement! That he had this save. Not that he was ever going to do anything with this save, but he had it. And he didn't want that disturbed. And he was very clear. He was very clear with me.
It took the person 10 years to finish that game, I think. I mean, literally, I restarted multiple times. I think when all is said and done,
it's taken me 15 years to not start that game.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I don't think your save is probably there anymore. I do believe I still have the cartridge, however.
Oh, that'd be funny.
I'm fairly certain to have it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but Mr. Rhythm had made an appearance on
that's true.
On the recently on
that's true
on my cart for Ocarina. So yeah,
that's really
there's
funny.
a theme here.
So
anyway, yeah. Renting games. That was a time.
I'm hoping we're recording on Monday. It's during E3, and tomorrow is the Nintendo Direct. And I've heard there might be an Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons remake that that you could not play.
Oh wow! Interesting. Because those are Capcom games too.
Yep.
I mean,
they're part of those. Yep, for sure. All right, go ahead, sir, with the second one I gave you.
Okay, what's in a name? From Zach. Hi, Brett and Tim. It's Zach K from Melbourne, Australia. Again, and I'm 100% up to date, just in time for my favorite Final Fantasy. I have a question and a story. Trim as required for spoilers. I don't know. I assume you trimmed then.
Yep, don't remember.
Okay,
I just copied it from last week.
Right. What are your characters' names, and who do you consider the main character? Oh, interesting question. I know this came up for Chrono Trigger, and it could apply to this game as well. As for the story, it applies to Final Fantasy VII, or VII. And my habit of naming the main male character, Zach. This made for some very confusing foreshadowing and also some extremely confusing reveals when best friends Zach and Zach became soldiers, and Zach helped Zach escape a lab where Zach dies protecting Zach in a final stand. As you can imagine, a young Zach had no idea what was going on. Thanks for the great cast, Zach. That's pretty funny. I didn't even know there was a Zach in Final Fantasy VII, but just by happenstance, naming your character after another character, that's pretty funny.
I sometimes do that in development. I will name a character after a character, just to see if there's any bugs. Like, I assume there's not, but it's just like, why not? Why not? It's a thing you can do to just, to test things,
to see, just because you're a bastard.
Yeah, just because that's who I am. Well, it would be embarrassing to find it out there after the fact, so I'd rather know beforehand. So yeah, who do you consider the main character? It's funny because I don't, even though I think it is in a large part Terra's story, I also in some ways don't feel like she's our stand-in character anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling I think I know who you might say, but she is definitely the main character in my mind, and that's how I treat her. And that's why it is always frustrating to me when they take characters away. But yeah, other than that, I mean, Celis has become more an important character to me for sure at this point. But I don't think, like, I actually this last session just for the hell of it, I rewatched the CG, the high res CG opening that they made for the PlayStation reissue, because I hadn't watched it since the beginning, of course, and now I know the characters much better, and I kind of can associate the models with them, and it was kind of cool to see all of them fully rendered. They actually have a couple of shots of the opera in there as well. So yeah, but who would you say?
I mean, it's clear who in this story is getting what he wants, and that's Kefka.
Oh, wow! Yeah, you think Kefka is the main character? Really?
No.
But he is. He's a good villain.
He's an excellent villain. Yeah, that's a really hard one for me to answer. I had another answer prepared, which was, well, they came before us. They'll be here after us. The Mughals. So clearly it's Mog's story.
Nice.
No,
nice.
I don't know. I mean, I would sort of like it to be Cyrano's story in some ways. because of his introduction, like, and what he went through. Like, I agree with you. I think Terra is in some ways the main character, but we spend significant periods of time without her, and we're in one of those periods now. So it makes me feel, but that's true of any character at this point. And of course, you could choose not to have characters in your party, for critical moments, and so that's a really hard question to answer. For me, the character I have most, consistently wanted to have in my party are Cyrano or Locke. So
yeah, right. I know you have affinity for Locke. And I mean, Locke is there early on, right? And he is sort of like, I think, meant to be more of the associated with the player, and I think or the audience, I'll say. And oftentimes that's who you would sort of denote as your main character, is the one that is the cipher for the audience. So he's probably closest in kind of like the traditional story structure sense, but I think, I don't know, I like Terra. I like the depth of what's going on with Terra as a character, and sort of like the arc that she's been going through. But it is weird that she has so many gaps where she's away. I mean, truth of the matter is, structurally, it feels like, I guess in 9 it was a little clearer cut. But I feel like with these games structurally, like, well, no, I guess Cloud is clearly the main character in that one. Yeah, this one kind of doesn't have as clear of a main character as it seems like what I know of the others. Because then, like, Lightning is clearly the main character of those. So maybe this is a weird one.
Yeah, 12 is kind of weird because they weren't happy with their main character, because I think it was basically marketing, or somebody higher up basically said, no, you need a more traditional insert character to be your main character. Whereas clearly the Han Solo, wannabe in that one is meant to be the main character. Like you can tell he's got so much verve. He's so much more interesting as a character. Anyway,
interesting.
Yeah. And then they just put in kind of a bland, normal, regular young hero that they have in many of their games. It's funny. It's hard to say. It's probably hardest to pick one in this game, I think, of the JRPGs we've played.
Well, and that might be good. I mean, at the end of the day, that might be why people have fond memories of the game, is that they all
choose their own insert.
They all
character.
choose their own character, and the fact that the character pool is so good that it would accommodate any of them being seen as a main character. Like, I could potentially see somebody saying that Sabin is their favorite too. He has an interesting arc as well, and has a pretty diverse set of things happening to him.
Or Celis. Who comes in pretty late, but has some very critical,
Celis
story
for sure.
stuff. Yeah,
I mean, she's in that CG cinema. I mean, they have multiple shots of her both in the opera and out of the opera. And the opera, like, I knew about the opera before even coming into this game. And and I know very little about the series, so that's a pretty significant scene. So. Interesting question.
It's all true. All right, one last one here from Moss. Quick question mark Final Fantasy VI story. Hi, Tim and Brett. I have more than once tried to play along with you guys as you go through games, only to find myself falling a month behind in episodes and not even going onto your Twitch streams to avoid spoilers. But this time, I think I'm going to make it through. A note about what happened to me today. After the siege on Narshe, I formed a party of 3, Locke, Edgar, and Celis, leaving Cyan, Sabin, and Gao behind because I wanted to have a party strong enough to fight somewhere else if I needed it. And I went back to figure out a castle to travel underneath the mountain range to the new area, Kolingen and Jador. When the castle emerges from the sand, I found myself right next to Kolingen. I knew the game wanted me to go there, so of course I just went off wandering anywhere but there. I went down to Jador, I went to the Opera House, I ended up in Zozo, but I never actually went to Kolingen because I wanted to explore. In Zozo, I faced the boss that blocks you from finding Terra, and he wrecked me with 600 damage attacks that wiped my party. So I reloaded and figured maybe I should go to where the game wanted me to go first. I rented a chocobo and went all the way back to where the castle came out of the ground. That's when I realized I could hire Shadow in the Kolingen pub to join my party. I went back to Zozo and used Shadow's throw attack to absolutely destroy the same boss that had completely owned me just 30 minutes prior. I love the idea that the game let me fail like that. It's what made me fall in love with Final Fantasy so long ago. It feels like a real world with real consequences, and you need to explore and make your own decisions. And those decisions matter. It's not about twitch reflexes or timing. It's about fleshing out the world and being properly prepared. Thanks as always for the podcast and the streams. Really appreciate the thoughtfulness and energy you both put into DGC. You guys are great. Moss. Thanks, comrade. Yeah, I mean, I think that's come up a lot this time as well. You know, we're talking about the different characters and the orders in which we're going after people and adding them and the inserts and all that stuff. So I think that's all well put, that this is all, there's a lot to be said for this, like that the world is reactive in this way, like, and in a way that's hard to do these days, with stuff that's not sort of purely systemic. So
yeah, I mean, there's definitely good lessons here that apply to lots of different genres, but especially RPGs.
For sure. All right. Well, we need to let you get going, so let's turn to the end here. Those we didn't have. I don't think we had a new review. I actually checked. I think right before we recorded. Nope. But we always love those in the Apple podcast infrastructure or wherever else you write reviews. If we don't read it on the cast, go ahead and shoot us a note where we can find it. We'd love to read those. And of course, those emails at devgameclub@gmail.com. Keep them coming. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com or on Twitter at devgameclub, where you can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
We are still twitching some weeknights and me on the weekends a bit. You are still trying to connect America for your mother, the president. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, she's my sister's the president now because my mother died.
Right, because of course it's a heritable title.
Yeah,
you know that, as Americans,
which they actually do comment on. I think the fact that's weird. Yeah. So, but I'm getting there. I'm in the mountains now. Found a cool snowy section and a little bit.
Oh, you're right at home then.
Yeah, it's fun. It's good. So far so good. Death Stranding, definitely still a weird game, but it's getting better.
I am playing Dragon Quest Builders. I misattributed that last week. It's fun. I actually am on to the second. There are 4 basically chapters, and it's sort of a Minecrafty game / JRPG. It's not a party-based JRPG like this. It's more just kind of like quirky thing. It's fun. It's sort of got building elements. It's got like Dark Cloud elements in a way. You have to build up these rooms in this little buildable area. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's charming. And of course, it's Dragon Quest, so you've got all of that. Anyway, so look forward to that weeknights, a couple weeknights a week, and then on the weekends I'll be playing more of Final Fantasy VI at twitch.tv/Brett Duville. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo is by Mark Garcia. Have fun forsaking this war-sick realm for your dignity and freedom this week, and good night.
Good night.